Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the re-release of the Revell kit number 854197 1972 Oldsmobile Indianapolis 500 pace car. It comes in 1/25th scale. Previous versions have been rated as skill levels 3, which is a moderate rating, and so you can consider that you should be at least 10 years and older. The kit has 143 parts molded in white, chrome, clear, and clear red, and includes vinyl tires and metal pins. This is a true 2-in-1 kit, as you can replicate either the Indy 500 version or an Olds 442 with decals, body panels, motor, and interior differences. The only truly new part is the fully painted figure of Linda Vaughn that sits on the back deck of the car. This has been a great build, and this is no exception. The decals in this version are even nicer than in past versions, so the parts are crisp and flash free, and the instruction book is typical book style Revell. Now the tires are generic no-name sidewalls, and the motor is well detailed, and after adding aftermarket accessories would enhance it even more. The chassis is crisp and has good detail. The suspension looks good when assembled, and the interior is detailed nicely with decals for wood grain, dash inserts, etc. Flocking the floor would finish it off and make a nice looking display. The body is solid and straight with no blemishes, and the fit and finish is tight and good. Overall, the final dimensions are length 8 3/16 inches, width 3 inches, and height 2 1/8 inch. Here are the decals for this kit. As you can see, they're very colorful and the registry is good. I strongly recommend using some decal setting solution to make it fit those contours. But as always, use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products mentioned here in the review for your own protection. For most of the construction, I use Model Master liquid cement and sometimes a slow setting tube glue, but other adhesives are used too for strength like super glue and white glue for clear parts. Mostly the paints are Tamiya acrylic bottle paints that are shot through an airbrush, or rattle can paints that can be used for things like primers. This construction starts with the motor, so we can assemble most of that before we get going. Assemble the block, the heads, the valve covers, the intake, and the oil pan and the water pump. After it dries, paint that unit a light blue. Then assemble the transmission and pan and paint that aluminum. The starter is black with a copper solenoid, and the oil filter is white with the mounting steel. Now the exhaust manifolds are steel colored, and the carb is a copper color. Now the fan belt's flat black, and the fan as well. The power steering and the AC are black too. Now the alternator is aluminum. And note, I didn't use the supplied coil here because I added my own pre-wired distributor. Now assemble all the painted parts, add the transmission, the fuel pump, and the oil filter to the left side. Then add the starter to the right side. Install the manifolds in the carb. Now on the belt, add the alternator, power steering, and AC unit, and install those onto the motor. Then add the fan and fan clutch. Here's that pre-wired distributor I was talking about. I just used some electrical wire and some 2mm jewelry beading for plug boots and put them all together. Now drill out the hole for the distributor shaft and install it with some super glue. Then drill out the plug locations on the cylinder heads and cut a small piece of that tubing for boots and slide it on each wire. Then match up the wires to a diagram that you can find on the internet for the firing order. Slide each wire into place and glue it down with some super glue. Pull the interior parts out and paint all of these flat black. Now the front seats can be assembled and painted satin black, just like the rear seat, and the console is satin black and the door panels are flat black. Now the firewall is flat black too. The brake booster is black and the master cylinder is steel with a copper top. The wiper motor is aluminum. Now the pedals are black with aluminum shafts. The battery is black with green caps and steel posts, and the shifter knob is black too. The decals are placed on the door panels and console and the trim detailed in silver. Now install the brake booster and the master cylinder and the wiper motor. Now pull these parts out for the dash assembly, and then paint the dash satin black along with the column, and the steering wheel is black with aluminum spokes. Then install the decals onto the dash using these numbers as a gauge map. I wanted to add some authenticity to my model, so I added carpet to it by using some flocking that you can find at hobby stores or craft stores or online hobby stores. Then I just used a little thinned white glue, painted the base where I wanted the flocking to stick. Then I sprinkled it on after sifting it, and then dumped off the excess, and voila, you have yourself a carpeted model. To add some flair to my all black interior, I printed out some copies of the Hearst logo onto some decal paper, and then I cut that out in the shape of floor mats and put them into place using some white glue into the floor pan. Now install the seats into the interior, the pedals and the console with the shifter as well. Then attach the door panels, add the battery and the firewall to the front. Install the column wheel and the dash into the interior. Get these parts out and we'll move to the chassis, so prepare it for paint by removing the copyright scripts molded in the suspension valley on the frame. Now use a scraper and some sandpaper to clean that up, and then attach the steering linkage and the transmission mount. Paint the chassis flat black with some black frame rails in semi-gloss and a steel gas tank. The exhaust is steel colored with aluminum mufflers. Then install the exhaust into place. Now note where the contact points are and glue the interior and the motor into place. Next, we'll arrange these parts to assemble the rear suspension. So add the differential cover and the lower link mounts, and then add the upper link mounts. The rear suspension is black and the shocks are yellow. The drive shaft is gunmetal. Now the front suspension has the springs attached, and those are painted black. The tie rods and the stabilizer bars are steel on the front and rear suspensions. Now install the front suspension and slide the drive shaft into the transmission and differential at the back, and install the rear suspension simultaneously. Then add the shocks into place. To create a used look on the tires, press and roll the tread on a sheet of fine sandpaper to rough it up. Then paint the inner part of the rim gold. Add the decal on the hubcap. The rear rim is flat black with the outer rim area aluminum. Now add the pin in the rear rim and install into the tire. Then add into the tire a front rim from the other side. The tires are non-directional, so it doesn't matter where they go. So install a tire onto each end of the axles and put them into play on your suspensions. Here's the front and the rear. Now you have a rolling chassis, and you can set this aside so that we can finish the body work. Now pull these parts out of the kit for the body and attach the mirrors into place on the body and add the hood springs to the hood as shown here. Wet sand the complete body with fine sandpaper to remove any blemishes and any of the parting lines and get the surface ready for paint. Then wash and rinse the car and let it air dry. Use a good quality primer and coat both the inside and the outside of the body and the hood with the primer. After the primer has dried, wet sand it again to remove any blemishes and look for anything that needs to be attended to. Repair that, then wash and rinse it again and let it air dry. I used a factory paint code from GM, which is paint code number 11 Cameo White, to paint the mix for this build. Once the paint has cured, you can put the decals onto the body. There are really gorgeous decals for this kit, but you're going to want to start with the large decals and make use of some of that setting solution we talked about earlier to make sure they conform to contours and stick properly to the body. Also, plenty of warm water will keep it moving until they're in the right position. There was plenty of chrome on the 72 Olds Cutlass, and I used a product called foil in order to replicate that chrome. It's like tape. You just put it into place like tape, stick it down, and then trim off the excess with a sharp hobby knife. Now use some white glue to install the glass into the windshield frame, and then paint the visors flat black and install the rear view mirror and the visors into the frame. Now install the frame under the body of the car. Assemble the radiator with the fan shroud and the wall and paint that flat black. Paint the hoses flat black with aluminum clamps and install the radiator to the chassis and attach the hoses to the radiator and the motor. Now it's time to mate the body to the interior tub by carefully shoehorning the chassis into the body. Start with the rear and snap it in at the front. Now we'll turn our attention to the front end and pull out the lenses, plates, and grille. Install the headlights and the fog lights with some white glue and use a 50-50 wash of flat black and thinner to fill the grille area, and then rub off the grille frame with a Q-tip to expose the highlighted chrome areas. Then add the decal to the grille and install the center panel. Cut the license plate to size and glue it onto the bumper. Then install the completed unit to the front of the body. The roof has both a convertible boot and an up-top option. The convertible boot was a flat white and the up-top was a satin black. So use either and add the glass and add the boot or the up-top. Now both can be used without glue, just place them on the vehicle. Get these parts out and install the tail lights into the bumper with some white glue. Then cut the license tag out and apply it with some white glue and install the bumper to the body. Then add the exhaust tips to the exhaust pipes. Assemble and paint the air cleaner a flat black. The AC line is aluminum and black, and install the AC line and add the air cleaner to the carb. Our final assembly shows us to add the door handles, the tachometer, the hood pins, and the mirror faces in place, and use a little super glue to make sure they stick, and install the hood onto the body. This kit comes with a pre-painted figure of actress Linda Vaughn to sit on the boot, just like she did for the 1972 Indy 500 parade. You'll have some pieces left over, like the decals and parts for the 442 options, and a set of rim backs that are left over from this build. There you have it. Revell re-released a great kit with some upgraded decals in custom gold that look great on that white finish. The motor assembles easily and has enough detail that some simple wiring and a little effort make it excellent looking in the engine bay. The chassis is well detailed, and again the fuel and brake lines are all that are needed. One thing about this car, however, is the tires. They just seem to be a little bit too small. I would recommend looking for some aftermarket polyglass tires or something from one of the other Revell kits. The interior is well detailed with the decals, but you have to remove the existing molded in gauges, etc. for the decals to work properly. Overall, the interior is nice and the body had no issues to repair. I didn't find hardly any blemishes and very little in mold lines, and the gold decals looked great. They fit spot on, and with the inclusion of the 442 decals, this makes it a 2-in-1 kit. I really enjoyed putting this one together, and she looks stunning on the shelf by itself, but would also make a nice race day diorama for your exhibition. We hope you liked this premium quality step-by-step review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and also at our website, www.rightonreplicas.com. Thanks!